Welcome to today's Explainer. I am so incredibly excited about this one. We're actually going to skip the standard agenda entirely today so we can dive right into this fascinating myth to mind journey. We're exploring the hidden darkness that exists within every single one of us. It's this wild concept that's literally inspired storytellers for centuries and completely revolutionized modern psychology. So, I want to start by asking you a bit of a provocative question. Are the ghosts in our room, or are they in our minds? I mean, think back to when you were a kid. Remember lying in bed, absolutely convinced that some terrifying monster was lurking just under the bed frame, or maybe hiding out in the closet? Now, obviously, as we grow up, we stop checking under the bed. But what if those monsters didn't actually disappear? What if they just kind of moved into the deep, unlit corners of our own psyche? Section 1. Monsters of the Dark Room, The Fable of Koki. Let's look at Koki. She's a little girl who wakes up in the middle of the night just utterly terrified by these huge, menacing, ghost-like shadows dancing all over her walls. Her room is lit by this faint, flickering candlelight, and she's hiding under her covers, holding her breath, totally convinced these massive phantoms are going to snatch her away. But when she finally peeks out from her blanket, she notices this tiny, isolated shadow over in the corner. And it actually speaks to her in this sad, gentle voice. It says, "I am not a ghost. I am the shadow of your small ball." The shadow explains that those terrifying, dancing ghosts, they're just the reflections of her toys, her stuffed rabbit, her books, her pens, all just being distorted by the flickering candle. The shadows don't have a mind of their own at all. They just follow reality, mirroring the physical objects without making any choices. And Koki's fear completely vanishes the second she realizes these shadows are intimately connected to the things she already owns and loves. Which brings us to Section 2, Discovering Carl Jung's Shadow, the Blind Spot of the Psyche. Enter Carl Jung, the legendary Swiss psychiatrist. He proposed that, much like physical objects cast a dark silhouette, our conscious minds possess a hidden, repressed counterpart. See, we all have a persona. This is the curated, socially acceptable mask we wear every day. It's the version of yourself you bring to a job interview or the life you post on social media. But right behind that mask, we have the shadow. Basically, since early childhood, whenever our natural instincts or desires were punished or frowned upon by society, we just locked them away. So the shadow becomes the ultimate blind spot of the psyche. It's this dark reservoir of our thwarted selfishness, unexpressed anger, and hidden desires. We totally refuse to acknowledge it, yet it is always there. Okay, so let's dive into how this actually affects us on a daily basis. I want to challenge you right now. Think of a time someone deeply, almost irrationally annoyed you. Maybe a coworker's arrogance just got under your skin in a way you couldn't even explain. Well, Jung believed this intense reaction is often an illusion called projection. Projection is basically when the shadow protects itself by making us see our own hidden faults in other people. We cast our own negative repressed traits right onto the people around us. We think, hey, there's nothing wrong with me, it's them. But really, it's our own shadow operating in that blind spot, pulling all the strings. Moving into Section 3, Tale of the Rebellious Shadow, Murad the Fisherman. Meet Murad. He's a 20-year-old fisherman who is absolutely terrified of the sea after it tragically swallowed his father years ago. Now he lives this incredibly rigid, disciplined existence on the safe shores just to provide for his stepmother and sisters. He's a young man carrying the weight of the world, and he is completely disconnected from his true self. I mean, he has this brilliant, suppressed love for astronomy. He has an incredible, hidden talent for cooking. He even harbors an unspoken, deep love for a girl named Sana. But his paralyzing fear of the sea and his intense dedication to keeping up his safe persona keeps all of this buried. As Jung would describe it, Murad is suffering from a deadly boredom, living a life that feels meaningless and empty simply because so much of his true potential is repressed. But here's the thing, you can't suppress the shadow forever. One night, this profound mystery unfolds. Murad is sitting on his roof, bathed in bright moonlight, just really feeling the bitterness of his stagnant life. Music is floating over from a neighbor's wedding, and suddenly, Murad looks over at the wall and realizes his literal shadow has stopped obeying him. While Murad is sitting perfectly still, his shadow is on the wall, happily and freely dancing to the neighbor's music. The unconscious mind has basically broken free, and it is demanding to be lived. Let's look at Section 4, Facing Past Traumas, The Shadow's Push. So the shadow begins systematically forcing Murad way out of his rigid comfort zone. It refuses to move forward, physically dragging him backward to play in the dirt with street kids, literally reconnecting him with his lost joy. Then, it pulls a terrified Murad right through the doors of an old library, which leads him to meet Saman, a master astronomer. And the shadow doesn't just play nice either. When Murad resists, when he refuses to go to a royal feast because his ego feels inadequate, the shadow uses pain. It literally pinches itself, sending sharp, torturous physical pain directly into Murad's body just to force the reluctant fisherman into the palace kitchens. And what happens? Well, Murad cooks a royal feast so spectacular that the king rewards him with 100 gold coins. The shadow used intense discomfort to force psychological and real-world growth. Let's just walk through this timeline of Murad's incredible transformation. We start with years of trauma, where he's living safely but miserably as a poor fisherman on the shore. Then, driven completely by his shadow, we see weeks of rapid change as he becomes an eager student of astronomy under Saman. This all escalates to the royal feast, where he finally accepts his talent and gets rewarded with those 100 gold coins, completely changing his family's fortunes. But the shadow isn't done. The timeline builds to this ultimate terrifying climax, confronting the sea itself. The shadow literally drags Murad by the ankles toward a boat, forcing him to face the very traumatic waters that took his father. Section 5. Embracing the dark side. The path to true self. By rowing out into the open sea, his heart just pounding in his chest, Murad finally faces his ultimate terror. And by surviving that immense fear, he realizes something truly profound. He didn't defeat his shadow out there on the water. He embraced it. He integrated the very fears and suppressed energies that had controlled him for so long. And this perfectly maps out the Jungian process of individuation. Step 1 is encountering the shadow, actually recognizing that hidden darkness and admitting it exists. Step 2 is merging with it, which is exactly that chaotic, painful struggle Murad experienced when his shadow pinched him and dragged him around. And finally, step 3 is assimilating the shadow. This means reincorporating those lost instincts, fears, and passions right back into your conscious personality. It is an absolute prerequisite for unlocking your full creative energy and becoming a complete, stronger human being. The whole point is summarized so beautifully in this quote from Carl Jung. He said, "The ego consciousness is nothing but a small spark in the great dark ocean, yet it is the light." Look, stepping into the darkness of our own minds is terrifying. It brings up major feelings of shame, guilt, and inadequacy. But as Jung points out, navigating that great dark ocean is quite literally the only way to allow our small spark of consciousness to truly light the path to our authentic identity. And that brings us to a rather stark warning. The danger of an unlived life creates a rigid, unfulfilled existence. Just like Murad before his transformation, when we avoid our shadow, we severely limit ourselves. We end up living only a tiny fraction of our potential, heavily burdened by the ghosts of our past and the weight of the lives we were simply too afraid to pursue. Honestly, it's the ultimate tragedy of the human condition, to stay safely on the shore while your true self waits out there in the deep water. Murad's narrative brings this all full circle. By facing those dark, turbulent waters, his shadow finally stopped rebelling. It became a quiet, integrated part of him. And that assimilation of his shadow gave him the undeniable courage to walk right up to Senna, offer her a red rose, and finally confess his love. He became whole because he realized that it's in the darkness where we truly discover our hidden selves. Which brings us to our final provocative thought to leave you with. What is your shadow trying to tell you today? Think about those sudden bursts of irrational anger you might get, your unexplained fears, or maybe those quiet secret dreams you're just too embarrassed to chase. I really urge you to stop running from those repressed aspects of yourself. Invite them in, engage with them, because the things you are most afraid to face might just hold the key to the absolute greatest version of who you are meant to be. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I sincerely hope this helps you light up your own dark rooms.